Mathetha Mokonyama leads the Transport Systems and Operations Impact Area Department at the CSIR, and he now joins us. Doc, good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Perhaps to start the conversation here, the permitting system is an important system because it really documents the limitations of operations, but it also certifies those who are allowed to operate. E-hailing drivers in various parts of the countries, in various metros, have argued that the rollout of their permits have been incredibly slow and arduous. In what ways would you argue this has either made it difficult for them to operate and operate well, or in what ways do you think perhaps it has left the sector open for misuse and abuse by various participants?
Good evening, Oliver. This conversation is almost 50 years old, since 1977, around permits and how to issue them. And what we have failed as South Africa now still today is that we are dealing with a network industry, not a route-based set of businesses. So the regulations as they are fail to recognize that we have a network industry. So what we're supposed to do, in fact, what government is really supposed to be doing, is to say, associations in this area are going to give you a license to operate, organize yourselves as a business to operate a network in a specific area. We do it with mining. We do it with other network industries, telecommunications, for example. But we have failed to do it with public transport, services. And that has created conflicts. For the past 50 years, we've been having conversations about conflicts. And that is as a result of how we design the very regulations that we are trying to implement.
Yeah. Let's then talk about e-hailing as a relatively nascent public transportation sector, right? Of course, it functions quite differently to other public transport sectors, where a lot of the empowerment seems to be in the hand of the rider, the consumer, the user, rather than the driver, operator, and owner. And in such an instance, the question ought to be, should consumers, users, and those who make use of the service have unfettered power to decide their movement, for instance? Or should it be specific in that if you're an Uber driver or if you're a Taxify or e-hailing driver of any sort, that you can only operate in a specific sector for a specific amount of time, geographically rather, and that users are only limited to those options? Because it seems as though that what taxi drivers are trying to protect is market share, market access, but also very specifically competitiveness. Yes,
exactly how you're putting it. You're talking about taxi drivers trying to protect. So it is a supply-driven industry at the moment, not so much demand-driven. It's less about the needs of the users and more about the needs of the operators. And we need to rectify that. We need to start with the voice of the customers. What do customers need, right? And design for that. There will be areas or parts of the network where you need high-capacity vehicles. It's more cost-effective to operate them in that way. There will be areas where it will be less competitive or less cost-efficient. So to understand that right, the permit issuances should be based on the specific requirements of the geography those permits are being issued in. Am I understanding that correct? Yes, absolutely. I think one of the starting points is customers are paying 40% more for transport than they should, right? So as an authority, as a planning authority, you should say, how do we design our network such that we reduce the cost of transport? But there are areas where you are not able to provide high-capacity services. And that is where the likes of e-hailing becomes more effective, because then you're providing a very direct services. But there's also times where there are specific needs, customer needs, and the customer is prepared to pay for those needs. And again, that's where e-hailing services are more effective. For regulatory purposes, the municipalities should be saying, what are we trying to protect? One of the things that we're trying to protect as an authority is things like reducing congestion, pollution, and so forth. Given the data that all these e-hailing companies generate, you then say, I'm going to give you an allowance for a certain number of kilometers and so forth. If you exceed, we're going to be paying a lot more as a service. In that way, you are pricing their pollution externalities into the service itself. But
should the regulators then consider placing a cap or a limitation on how many operators can be active on the app at any given time? I mean, if all Uber drivers decided we're going to use the Uber app, or if all Bolt drivers decided we're going to use the Bolt app, they're all using it, right? And it may be more than what is the demand on the day, and so the saturation. But then there's also the consequences of pollution and congestion that you're speaking of. Should a regulator say, we'll only allow you to operate in this geography at any given time, no more than 100 drivers or operators for this period of time, given peak or off-peak?
You cannot enforce that. It would be too expensive to enforce such a system. What you're supposed to do is to price. The price should be able to regulate the behavior, of the operators.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Dr. Mathetha Mokonyama. I really do appreciate your insights on this really complex case, and I hope we would have more time next time to expand on some of the others, bottlenecks in the system, but really do appreciate it. That is Dr. Mathetha Mokonyama, who is the lead Transport Systems and Operations Impact Area Department at the CSIR. Of course, we'll bring you more on this conversation as it unfolds, and those regulations are being promulgated, or at least are coming into effect in October 2025.